ladies and gentlemen. 811 Big Sick Morning Show with Jazzy and McBee. So the world watched in awe and shock over the weekend as the video of Diddy assaulting Cassie was put out.
Man.
We'd heard about it, we'd read about it, but to see it was disturbing to say the least.
It really was.
Interestingly enough, some stats I pulled up. Did you know Georgia was recently ranked 10th in the nation for its rate of men killing women? 1 in 5 women and 1 in 7 men have experienced, this is nationally, severe physical violence by an intimate partner, aka hit by a fist or something hard, beaten, slammed against something at some point in their lifetime.
Wow.
This particular video has brought to the forefront yet again something that is we've been living with as a community and as a society for quite some time, domestic violence. Joining us this morning is Dr. Adrienne from WAOK. Good morning, sis.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
How are
Good
you?
morning. Glad to be here to have this conversation.
Oh, no, that's right.
What we hope to do today is to provide you some information, some insight, and some answers if you have them. 404-726-WVEE. We're open to your questions and comments about domestic violence. We hope to provide you some help if you need it.
Yeah, insight.
Some resources if you need it. My first and most important question, Dr. Adrienne, how does one know that they're in a domestic violence situation?
So I think that before we start to talk about domestic violence, one of the things that I think I need to point out that's very important is that children who grow up in households where domestic violence is present are more likely to either be victims of abuse or abusers. And so it's important to recognize that, you know, if this type of behavior is going on around kids, because I think that we can't talk about Puff Daddy without talking about the fact that one of his sons is being accused of some similar behavior.
Right.
So when you witness this type of behavior, it increases the likelihood that this is who you will become, either a victim or a perpetrator of domestic violence. And so a lot of times, you know, words are fluid. You know, they don't always mean the same thing to everybody, but what we know for sure, somebody putting their hands on you means the same thing to everybody.
Absolutely.
Right. We don't have to be confused about that one.
No.
And so when you talk about domestic violence, what we are talking about is sexual and physical abuse, usually from a partner, a domestic partner, or from a spouse. So it's happening inside of your home. Yeah.
So why is there a disconnect with some people, the realization
that is happening?
That I'm in this space. I'm being abused.
Yeah.
Why is there a disconnect? 'Cause you know, people from the outside always, what you doing? Why you think that? But why is there a disconnect sometimes?
Yeah. So as a psychotherapist of 33 years, I have experienced individuals who have been victims of domestic violence. And so it's easier for other people on the outside to say, don't you understand?
Right, to assess the situation. Right. Mm-hmm.
But as somebody who lived with a narcissist, and narcissistic personality disorder is a diagnosis for a mental illness.
Wow.
So it's not just something we're talking about. It's not just conceit. It's got a whole lot of other characteristics and traits that go along with it. But even as a therapist, I did not recognize what I was living.
Wow.
And so what I tell people is that what you have to realize is that we were all a clean slate when we were born. You had no thoughts. Everything you got, somebody gave it to you, right? And so if you are living in a situation and this is the behavior that you are witnessing, a lot of people normalize it. My situation was just the opposite. I was not familiar with these behaviors. My dad ain't never put his hands on my mama. He don't curse at my mom. You know, like those things were not present. And so I just kept questioning, what is this that I'm living? What is this? And I would often say, well, he's just conceited, or he's self-centered. He's arrogant. But narcissism goes so much deeper than that, because you're talking about manipulation and control. And so a lot of times what happens is you get sucked back in because of the apologies, the promises to do better, the gifts. And so I can only imagine that someone in this situation as Cassie is in, she was probably getting offered big time gifts.
Of course.
Which for her, depending on what her background was, what she had experienced growing up, probably felt like he's going to do better.
Right.
This time will be different. And so what people who experience domestic violence have to come to the realization for themselves is that you will know when you sick and tired of being sick and
and
tired.
I said that, and I have to say, growing up watching my mom get in some of those relationships that was abusive. It was me right now as a woman, I'm opposite of that.
Yeah.
So if I see the characteristics, or even a man is threatening me in a relationship, or his voice raises, so I'm already in defense mode. You know what I'm saying? Already like off back 100, as well as my sisters. And so with that being said, I've also witnessed friends that were in those relationships, and I was question like, why are you going back? Like, this is crazy. Why are you going back? So just to see that video is also disturbing, and it's not just women, men are being abused as well.
Absolutely. There are men out there who suffer from domestic violence as well.
404-726-WVE. Dr. Adrienne is here. You have questions, you have comments, you have you need help, you need resources. We're here to provide that this morning. Our conversation about domestic violence with Dr. Adrienne from WAOK is in the building on B103. 827 Big Chicken Morning Show with Jasmine McBee. We're being joined by Dr. Adrienne in the building for WAOK. She is well familiar with this domestic violence situation. She's dealt with it. She's helped people through it over the past 2+ decades.
Yeah.
And of course, this is all being brought about the horrific video that we all witnessed over the weekend, Diddy's assault on Cassie. By any means, the only one we've seen, but clearly not the only one that's happened.
Exactly. And it's a shame because domestic violence have been going on for the longest. And I think, a lot of people hide it. We have social media to where it's more transparent now, after they've gone through the situation or after someone has gotten beat up. But like I said, growing up, I've seen my mom in different situations in which, she was abused. To me, it had a different effect on me to where if I'm feel threatened by any man, I'm already in defense mode.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? And that goes for me and my sisters. But I wanted to ask you, when women are in these situations and they go and they file a police report, right? The police will tell you, hey, just file a TPO, and that's a piece of paper that just says stay away from this person, but it doesn't really protect them from the perpetrator.
Yeah. And so a lot of times, because of our relationship as African Americans with law enforcement, we don't feel comfortable going to them and having a conversation about what it is that we're going through. Because for one thing, the research has shown that a lot of times, even when a victim goes to law enforcement as a female, they're not supported by law enforcement.
Exactly.
And so the fear is that nothing's going to happen to the perpetrator, and I'm still going to be exposed to that person.
Right.
And so when we talk about victim blaming, a lot of times the victims are made to feel like they're the ones who are at fault for the behavior of the abuser. And so that's one of the things that, needs to be reinforced, is that it's never the victim's fault. It's never the victim's fault what an abuser does to them. That's the behavior of the abuser.
404-726-WVEE. We got your questions, comments, resources all on deck. V103, good morning.
Good morning. My name is Monique. I am calling from Atlanta, Georgia.
What's your question, darling?
And let me see. I'm for me because I have a daughter that was murdered at 21 years old for domestic violence. So this is kind of a touchy subject for me. Then my godsister was the one on Cleveland Avenue that got killed, shot in the head 3 weeks ago. So how, as a person who has been through domestic violence before the hand, get out, how do you overcome someone else's domestic violence that have played on your life? Like watching my daughter in a casket after she was beaten after I that day and tried to warn her but couldn't do it. Like, how do you overcome what you have seen from other people's domestic violence?
So one of the things that I would definitely recommend is that you have to set some boundaries. And when I say set some boundaries, I mean you have to be careful even in retelling your story, because every time you tell your story, you are re-traumatizing yourself. And so you need to go to therapy if you have not been to therapy, so that you can find your own place of healing and be able to grieve your daughter. And then hopefully through the process of therapy, what you will find in there is purpose, even in the pain, because a lot of times we think that, all there is the pain, but there's always a purpose if you look for it. And so that your daughter's death is not in vain, you got to look for the purpose in it. But stop re-traumatizing yourself by continuing to tell the story and share the story. Set some boundaries.
Amen. Thank you for your call. If you find yourself or know anybody in a domestic violence situation, there is the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Or in Georgia, you can call the Georgia Coalition Against Domestic Violence at 1-800-334-2836. More of your questions, comments, queries, and, of course, resources will come back when we come back. Dr. Adrienne is here with Jazzy McBee and Big Tigger on V103. 846 Big Tigger Morning Show with Jazzy McBee on V103. ATL's number one for hip-hop, R&B, and throwbacks. Happy Monday, May 20th, on our way to a high 84 degrees. Dr. Adrienne is our guest this morning from WAOK. We are discussing domestic violence in our everyday lives. Of course, this is spurred on by a variety of things, including Diddy's now very infamous video abusing Cassie, the claims against Kel Mitchell that his ex-wife made as well about abuse. And it's just something that kind of lives under the surface every day.
Yeah. You know, I think that one of the things that people don't understand is that when somebody's a victim of domestic violence, that's a very confusing thing, even for them, even the people who normalize it because they grew up seeing it. You know, even when you witness this, you know, you might come out of your parents' house or your mother's house, your father's house saying, I will never allow that to happen to me. But if you've been in a situation where you've heard somebody tell somebody that they love them after being physically abusive to them, it's almost like something that it triggers in your mind, in that in order for somebody to show love to me, they've got to be physically abusive to me. So even though rationally you might know that doesn't make sense, you know, that you can put your hands on me and then tell me you love me. But if you've grown up and you've witnessed that, that's what becomes the cycle of violence. And so it's this intergenerational transmission of violence that, you know, kind of goes through the generations because it's what you've witnessed.
Right. And then there is going so far to nowadays, even back then, but nowadays it's more, you hear about more stories about women being killed by their boyfriends because of domestic violence situations. So, it's just happening even with our young people. And it's like, you know, what do you do? Because they're not talking about it. You know, they're staying, you know, it just, what do you do about it?
But you know, what's interesting is that growing up in Tuskegee, Alabama, my father was very strict. So I couldn't date until going into my senior year in high school. And so my first boyfriend at 17 years old had some very abusive tendencies. And my mother was the one that kept saying, something about him, it just scares me. And so, of course, I could not see it because I'm in love. But she was so right, because it was the manipulation and control. It was telling me who I could and could not talk to. It was all of that. And so she felt like this is a buildup. He's going to put his hands on you. And eventually he did push me.
404-726 WVEE. Love to hear from you and offer you some insight and possibly resources. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Miss Garrett from Stone Mountain.
What's your comment?
It was in response to your question of how don't you know that you're in a situation. The biggest thing for me was that I fought back. I wasn't one of those people that curled up in the corner and cried and was afraid. I didn't feel afraid until the end. And during the event, I fought back. It started verbally, and then it turned into him losing verbally and putting his hands on me. So it wasn't a turning me attack, tell me what to do. I didn't do it, and I was afraid. I didn't recognize it as violence. As domestic violence. We just had a dumb relationship, and everybody go through this. That was my thing. The second point was reaching out for help. I didn't reach out for help because I had kids in the house, and that automatically includes CPS, which means that they're going to try to take my kids. So what do I do with him? And the piece of paper does nothing. So that was my experience.
So how did you come out of it?
I moved with the midnight train to Georgia. I got my kids
Not the
in
midnight
the
train.
car.
So did the
I got
first
my kids in the
time?
car. I drove as far as I could into the next enterprise where my car pretty much broke down because I was out of power steering. I rented a car and we drove to Georgia.
Wow. Well, we're glad you're out of that
Oh, yeah.
situation, and thank you for sharing. B103, good morning.
Good morning, Tigga. Good morning, Jazzy.
Good morning.
Good morning, guys. I have a question. I'm a African American woman. I am married. My abuser is mental, is verbal, and I'm not. The era that I was raised by my mother is not to tolerate it, and so being married to this individual and getting to a point where it got to, I almost pulled my gun out to kill him.
Ooh.
I called the police here in Georgia, and the police told me that they could not remove him because he had been staying at the house.
That's correct.
And
Yeah.
so my question is, how do we protect ourselves when the law really is not there to
Great
help
question.
us?
When you say protect yourself when the law is not there, I think a lot of times as victims, we feel like we don't have options, but you do have options. And so if you are deciding to stay in the marriage, then you can't change that other person's behavior. And so I don't know if you all have tried counseling. I don't know if that person would be classified as a narcissist. I don't know enough about your situation, but the only person that can remove you from that situation is going to be you. And so if you're looking for the laws in terms of what it is that they're going to provide in terms of protection for you, it's going to be very clear. Because even if you had pulled your gun out and he had not assaulted you physically, you were going to be the one that was in trouble. That's why I had to stop watching Snapped, because
Right. Those
You better
because
turn that damn
right.
snap, dog.
man, it tell you. Woo.
and I was having these feelings like I want to hurt him for the things that he's
Yeah.
saying to me. But you,
Right.
the emotional and mentally abusers are not going to stop with that type of behavior. If that's the type of person he is, that's probably the type of person
Right.
he's going to be. And you can't change that. He has to have the will to change for himself. Most people live and die the same way. So you're going to have to make
Okay.
some decisions about what is more healthy for you.
Absolutely.
Because my problem is he's stating that he's not going to give me a divorce. He's stating that
He can't make
wherever
you stay
I
married
go,
to him. He cannot make you
Right.
stay married to him. Mine said the exact same thing. I represented myself. I paid that $250.
I know that's
I
right.
filed on January 11, 2018, and on May 2nd, 2018, I was divorced.
I
But let me
know
tell
that's
you
right.
something. I was out of $50,000. But my peace was priceless. He could have it all. It did not matter to me. He was not going to make me stay married to him. So you have to nobody can make that decision for you but you. Not your
Right.
family members, not your friends, and stop talking to them. Go get yourself on the couch, talk with a therapist, and get yourself a plan. If you don't want to be there, get yourself a plan and stop talking to everybody about it.
Thank you for your call. We're going to continue the conversation. Please give us a call, 404-726-WVEE. Once again, Dr. Adrienne from WAOK is in the building. We are discussing the problems and challenges centered around domestic violence in our community, and particularly with people of color this morning. So please give us a holler, share your experiences, and if you need resources, we have them for you here. One number, the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233. Or in Georgia, the Georgia Coalition Against Domestic Violence at 1-800-334-2836. More with Big Tigger, Jazzy McBee, and Dr. Adrienne next on V103. 905, Love is Blind. Having this conversation about domestic violence. Big Tigger Morning Show with Jazzy McBee on V103, the ATL's #1 for hip-hop, R&B, and throwbacks. Dr. Adrienne, kind enough to join us this morning for some insights, some resources, and more about domestic violence and what you should do and what you can do. I'm going to give you these two numbers again, 1-800-799-7233. That's the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Also, the Georgia Coalition Against Domestic Violence, 1-800-334-2836. Doctor, why is it, does it help or hurt when family members and friends put their own 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 cents in these particular situations, because we can clearly see it, and we feel like, why don't you see it? Does it help or hurt when we add to that, like add to the confusion of it? I guess.
And you know what? That's what it is. It's adding to the confusion. So it depends on how the help comes, the form of the help. You know, everybody's not equipped to shoulder your trauma and the stuff you got going on. And so sometimes, depending on who it is that you go to for support, they're not the best person to support you. Because if you're dealing with a family member, for example, who has dealt with the same thing, if they didn't get out of their situation, they probably not going to tell you to get out of your situation. So you got to be careful, even in terms of who it is that you go to for your support. And then what we have to remember is that people give you advice based on who they are, not based on who you are. So even when you go to family and friends who may not have been in a domestic violence situation, they're going to tell you, well, this is what you need to do. And it might not have anything to do with you. They're looking at it from their own lens of who it is that they are. So they don't know your whole situation. And so I tell people, you really are the best decision maker for your life. Sometimes, depending on what you've been through, you might not think you are. You may not think that you're equipped and built to figure your way out of a bad situation, but with the right support, you can. And a lot of times, instead of friends and family, that is a therapist who can be objective and have the conversations with you and look at it through a different lens.
And those resources as well, because, you know, a lot of calls that we have gotten, they say, well, you know, I don't know where to go, or, you know, I don't know how to leave. But those resources, I know a young lady called. She said that resource, I forget the name. What was the name of the resource? She said they helped her out immediately, and it has been a great resource. So, like you said, a lot of times they don't know where to go or who to go to, because again, you know, I know, you know, people who've been in that situation. I'm like, oh, why don't you leave? And then they go right back, and then I'm mad, and then I'm invested in the situation, and then I got to pull my hands off of it, because I'm like, I don't know what else to do. I don't know how to help you.
Well, that's the part that frustrates family and friends, because a lot of times we might want somebody to be out of a situation that they've not decided they're ready to leave. And that's what makes you frustrated.
404-726 WVEE. Your questions, comments, and resources are all at hand. V103, good morning.
Hey, good morning. How are y'all?
We're good.
I was just calling to comment on the domestic violence that you guys were talking about.
Yes.
So there's this program, and they work in Atlanta. They're called Partners Against Domestic Violence, and they literally saved my life.
Now, what type of resources did they provide for you?
They do rapid rehousing. They give you community resources, and they get you a safe way out if you don't think you can get out with you and your kids.
Okay.
That's an amazing. Is there a number that people should know?
Yeah, their number is 404-873-1766.
Thank you for your call. Really, we're glad you're safe.
Yes, yeah, it's great. And I mean, those people, they will help you get out. If you think you can't get out, you're scared of DFACS, taking your kids. No, they work with you. They work with DFACS. They get you there.
Wow.
They get you out on your own.
Well, again, thank you for sharing, and thank you for your call.
Thank you so much.
V103, good morning.
Good morning. I'm not going to give my name just for the sake of security purposes. But right now, I'm actually in a moment of experiencing domestic violence, and I've been experiencing it for the past 4 years now. I've had hematomas, black eyes. I've had to get 24 to 30 stitches in my lip.
Oh, my God.
And my question is, how do I begin the process of leaving without feeling guilty? Because some type of way, every time I get in my head to leave, he always makes me feel obligated to forgive him again. And I think growing up, it's the opposite for me. I wasn't so much as to be raised in a house where domestic violence. I was raised to love and take care of other people around me. So I feel like now that's kind of the position that I'm in. And also I feel like my biggest mistake is, like, since my father has passed, he knows that I don't have like that masculine person around to protect me. So I'm kind of scared to leave, and I don't know what to do like right now.
So I have so many comments for you. Number one is you need to get on the couch. You need to get into therapy, because for whatever reason, this individual has convinced you that you are better off staying with him as he abuses you than to protect yourself. And so that means you're not looking out for yourself. And the fact that your father is not here does not mean that you have to stay with a man who is being physically abusive to you. And what you're describing is extensive physical trauma that you have, at the hand of this individual. And so why would you allow yourself to feel guilty from somebody that's hurting you? That's my question to you. Because he's manipulating you and he's controlling you. And so if you don't look out for you, nobody's going to look out for you, because he's certainly not going to. He's already shown you that he won't.
Yeah. I got a bad habit of putting other people before myself, and it's a thing of knowing that I should be done with the situation. I don't know why I want to leave. I just don't know where to start and how to do it.
So is it a situation where you don't know how to put a plan together?
Yeah.
Okay. So there are resources out there that will help you if you are truly serious about putting a plan together. So this Partnership Against Domestic Violence is a great place for you to start. Their number is 404-873-1766. But like I always say, nobody's going to know when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired but you. And what you're talking about is so extensive in terms of the physical trauma that this person has done to you, that if you continue to stay in there, I can assure you it's going to get much worse. It's not going to get better.
Right.
So if you're thinking he's going to change, I'm so sorry, but you are fooling yourself. He's not going to change. If he was going to change, he wouldn't have been this person in your life.
Good luck, and thank you for your call. Dr. Adrienne, thank you for stopping by this morning. I pray that we've helped some people out there listening.
Yeah.
I pray that the conversation was healing and enlightening to some. Again, I'll give you two numbers and she'll give you a third. 1-800-799-7233 is the National Domestic Violence Hotline. In Georgia, you can call the Georgia Coalition Against Domestic Violence at 1-800-334-2836. And there was a third option that you had.
The Partnership Against Domestic Violence is 404-873-1766.
And I'm also copy these numbers, and in case we couldn't get to you on the calls and you didn't want to call in, you want to just send like a DM to the Big Tigger Morning Show or Jazzy MCBEE.
We'll post them as well.
We'll post them, or I can just send it to you in a DM. We'll do it like that.
Sum this all up in one sentence for someone out there struggling with this particular situation.
If you are a victim of domestic violence, I need you to understand it's not your fault. You didn't cause the abuse, and you are responsible for removing yourself from that situation. And so if you think you're stuck because your mindset has not changed. You can get yourself out of the situation, and there is help and support out here to help you do it.
Last but certainly not least, how can they get in touch with you?
So they can listen to me on Tuesday nights, Relationship Talk with Dr. Adrienne, and Wednesday night, The Mental Space with Dr. Adrienne, both 7 to 9 p.m. on WAOK 1380, the Odyssey app.
Yeah.
And they can also watch the Mind Matters series that's airing on the WAOK YouTube channel that I've been doing for Mental Health Awareness Month.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Thank you again. You've been very helpful, very insightful, and we appreciate you, sis.
Thank you all for having me.
Absolutely.
Look, I'll walk across the hall any day.
Well, come
I know,
on
that's
down the
right.
street. Come on down the street.
We enjoyed it. I really did. A lot of insight, and just reaching out to so many people that are in a situation.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank
ATL,
you all.
Please take care of yourself. We'll be back with more Big Ticket Morning Show with Jazzy McBee on V103.
V103.